This is Lew White again. Today I was just debating with someone on the internet who was convinced that we didn't have to keep the commandments. They were done away with. Well, in the last days, Paul wrote to Timothy about the last days, explaining that doctrines of demons would overtake the people living in the last days. And they would think that they were okay, but by not obeying the commandments, which is the Torah, the law of the moral law, that makes a difference between whether you're upright or whether you're incorrect. And we seek to be right, and we're not arguing with people, we're just coaching them along the right path, but they're not even near the path, and they don't know it. They've been living in darkness for generations and training people to have a bitterness towards Torah, a bitterness towards obedience, rather than a bitterness towards sin. See, that's the big distinction. We have a couple of different questions, and I think you're going to enjoy the analysis because people are trained to sin, and they think they're fine. Here's a question. Was Yahusha upset with the teaching authority of those days, like the Pharisees, for guarding the Torah or for breaking it and living according to their own traditions? Now the answer to that question is found at Matthew 15 verse 3, and Matthew 23 verse 3, and Matthew 23 verse 28, Mark 7, 8, 9, and 13, and John, or Yehukanan, 7 verse 19. The answer to that question. Was he upset? Yes. But what was he upset about? The fact that they were making people learn the Torah and obey it? Or was it rather that they had taught them to not obey it, but preferred their own traditions? The doctrines of demons were even existing then. Now here's another question, and keep that question in mind. Is Yahusha Mashiach upset with the teaching authorities of today for guarding the Torah? Would he be upset because you obeyed his commandments today? Or for breaking it? The answer is found at Hebrews 13 verse 8. Yahusha HaMashiach is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And if you do obey the commandments, who's going to get upset? Well, you know. He's not going to be upset. Yahusha's very happy because he's the one that's writing them on your heart. A love for the commandments, which trains you how to love him and your neighbor. And in the last days, Paul wrote to Timothy in 1 Timothy 4:2 that they would be influenced in the last days by hypocrisy of liars and doctrines of demons. And they think they're fine. Now, because of the increase of lawlessness, there's a bitterness towards obedience. And they teach the traditions of men. What traditions? Well, the old pagan traditions. Eggs, fertility, and rabbits, trees, and ornaments, and pumpkins, birthday cakes, blowing them out, making wishes. And in the last days, there's a bitterness. There's no bitterness towards sin, but when there is a bitterness towards sin, love grows cold. Okay, we're going to pick up with 2 Timothy chapter 4 first, but in 1 Timothy chapter 4, something emerges that I want you to pay attention to, but only after I read 2 Timothy chapter 4. Listen to this. Okay. In the sight of Yahuwah and Adoni Yahusha Mashiach, who shall judge the living and the dead at his appearing and his reign, I earnestly charge you, proclaim the word. Be urgent in season and out of season. Correct, warn, appeal, with all patience and teaching. For there shall come a time when they shall not bear sound teaching, but according to their own desires they shall heap up for themselves teachers tickling the ear, and they shall indeed turn their ears away from the truth and be turned aside to myths. We could go into all kinds of things that men have invented, like sacraments and holy water, transubstantiation, Sunday. They changed the Sabbath, what? And Trinities. Just all kinds of nonsense. And it just goes on and on, this list in here. Yeah, I put this in parentheses in there, of course, but let's turn to 1 Timothy chapter 4. Okay. Here it is. And I'm going to go ahead and just read from the first verse, and then you can see it in context. Now, this is 1 Timothy chapter 4. But the Ruach, that's the Spirit, distinctly says that in latter times some shall fall away from the belief, paying attention to misleading winds and teachings of demons, speaking in hypocrisy, having been branded on their own conscience, forbidding to marry, saying to abstain from foods which Yahuwah created to be received with thanksgiving by those who believe and know the truth. Because every creature of Yahuwah is good, and none is to be rejected, if it is received with thanksgiving, for it is set apart by the word of Yahuwah and prayer. Now, he has to say that it's set apart by the word in order for it to be food in the first place. There's obviously animals that you can't eat. Roaches, snakes, squirrels, skunks, things that are not declared food. But you see, Christian teachers have misled people into uncleanness. And that's why so many people are sick. So if we're going to be branded in our conscience, wouldn't it be better to not have it done by doctrines of demons, and instead be branded in your conscience with Yahusha's Torah, his and receive a love for the truth? This is kind of a brand too. His menorah is a symbol of the Torah and his teachings, his instructions. And if we have him living in us, he explains that to us, and we are joyful. We're not angry, and we're just trying to coach people to understand. And if you are obeying his commandments, the only ones that are going to be upset are going to be the ones that have been teaching you the errors, because the doctrines of the demons have been going on for 12, 13, 1400 years, and people don't know what they're listening to. So listen for the voice of your shepherd, Yahusha, and he will give you a love for the truth, and he'll know by your behavior that you believe him and obey him. Obedience pleases him. Love him and guard his commandments. Thanks for watching. See you in the next episode. Bye. At that time I shall bring you in, even at the time I gather you. For I shall give you for a name, and for a praise, among all the peoples of the Eretz, when I turn back your captivity before your eyes, said Yahuwah. And at verse 17, Yahuwah says, Yahuwah, your Elohim, is in your midst, is mighty to save. He rejoices over you with joy. He is silent in his love. He rejoices over you with singing.